Hey everybody, it's Bill with Dine Drink Cruise. It is June of 2022, and what I wanted to do real quick was give you an update on what the check-in process is like for Carnival Cruise Lines. I did this video several months ago in preparation for a December cruise, and I wound up not being able to actually take that cruise because of the COVID. I am really excited to finally get back on a ship, but there's some things you need to know about the check-in process I want to tell you about. And perhaps one of the most important ones is how the check-in process relates to the time you show up at the pier and when you can get started. So let's actually start with those two things. If you're in a regular guest room, you can check in 14 days before your cruise departs. If you're in a suite or if you're a high status member in the Carnival Loyalty Program, the very important Fun Person program, you can check in 16 days in advance. Check in as early as you possibly can because when you check in, one of the privileges you get is selecting the time that you're going to arrive at the pier. And that matters because under the old system, you could kind of show up whenever you wanted. Now you've got an appointment, and if you don't show up during the appointment time, depending on the pier policy, you'll either have to wait much longer in a longer line, or they simply won't let you into the building. So you're going to want to check in as quickly as you can because if you're like me, you want to get on that ship as early as possible. If you're like some of my friends, you know what? You want to sleep in. You want to have a leisurely breakfast and lunch, get on the ship later. Both of those and several things in between are great choices, but you're going to have your preference and you want to pick it. Now let's talk about for a second what those 14 and 16 day timelines actually mean. So if your cruise departs at 4 in the afternoon, it doesn't mean that you can check in 14 days before 4 p.m. What it means, and I'll talk about my case because we're in a suite in the cruise that I just checked into. So I could check in 16 days in advance. It didn't mean 16 days before 4 p.m. What it meant was 16 days before midnight on embarkation day, and it was midnight according to the clock in Miami. So because I live in the central time zone in Texas, I was actually able to check in for my cruise 17 days in advance. It was 11:02 at night. I was sitting on the couch having a cocktail with my wife. We were watching TV. I'm like, oops, it's 11:02, gotta go check in. Ran over here to the computer and it worked perfectly. And because I checked in essentially immediately when check-in opened, I was able to select my preferred boarding time for our cruise, which was 10 o'clock, and all the options were available. The boarding times come in half-hour increments, so check in as early as you can, and depending on your time zone, you may be able to check in late in the evening the day before it says you're eligible. And even if you're not, what they're talking about is midnight in Miami on the day of embarkation day. You certainly don't have to wait till 4 in the afternoon. So let me walk you through. One of the other things to know about that is I've logged in for making this video. I logged in to the Manage My Booking section. I don't see immediately a link to change your check-in time. So make sure you pick the one you actually want and verify it before you finish submitting everything. Let me spend a few minutes walking through the rest of the things that it asks so you'll know what to expect and what to have ready. So I'm looking at my completed check-in now. I can view and print documents, but there's a guest information screen and one person can check in for the whole party, everybody under your reservation. But it asks for my basic sort of address, my mobile phone number. I would absolutely give them a working mobile phone number. I'm leery of that sometimes because I don't want people calling my phone with junk mail calls. But if there's a change in boarding time or some other problem on the day of embarkation, I want them to be able to get a hold of me. It also asks for an emergency contact and for any medical advisory, so make sure that you have all that information ready. Then I went through the same thing for my wife, and I went through the same thing for each of my kids who are going on this cruise with us. And ask about medical conditions. If you've got any of those, make sure that you're ready to talk to them about it so that they can help you with it on the ship. But happily, that doesn't apply to anybody in my category. It then asks for your travel documents. So, one of the things that I did in a past life, I was a consular officer at U.S. Embassy Mexico City, and it was a very long time ago, right? We're talking, I was from like 2004 to 2006, so it was back in the day. You certainly can travel on a closed loop cruise with your birth certificate and your driver's license. But please don't do that, right? Like, please give them an actual passport. And here's why. It's international travel and stuff goes wrong. And if you wind up needing to depart the ship at some point, maybe you have an ill relative in the United States, maybe you're ill, maybe, I don't know, whatever the crisis is that requires you to get back to the United States, if you only have your birth certificate and your driver's license, you're going to be significantly delayed getting back home until you've got the appropriate paperwork, and that's going to be a real problem. One of the other things that we used to run into back in Embassy Mexico City was, let's say somebody presented us a birth certificate from Massachusetts from 1953. We had no idea what a birth certificate from Massachusetts in 1953 was supposed to look like, which meant there was yet another delay in verifying that that was a valid travel document before we were able to get you the passport or whatever else you needed to get on the plane. So please travel with a passport. And when you're checking in, it will ask you for your passport number. It will also ask you for your known traveler number, which in my case isn't as relevant because I don't think there is, that's what would get you pre-check. I don't think there is any benefit of that coming back in Galveston, although there is in other ports. So make sure that you have that information. Give them your passport number. Do that for all of the members of your party. Fortunately, none of our passports expire for well over a year, so it's fine. They ask if you are parking at the pier, and they don't mean are you parking somewhere nearby. They mean are you using the actual pier parking, whether you're flying to or from the cruise. And they ask you the same question again for everybody in your party. And then you have to pick the check-in time, which is the most important part. You set up an onboard expense account. And one of the things that I really like about the way the Carnival's doing onboard expense accounts is I could set a spending limit for my kids. My boys are both teenagers, and I want them to be able to spend some money on the boat. You might not, and that's great. I also don't want my boys to buy all the things they might possibly buy. So I set a budget for them, right? And a budget which was appropriate to our family. I don't remember having had the ability to do that the last time I sailed on Royal Caribbean. Essentially, charging privileges were either on or off, and that is fantastic. You can split it and add an additional expense account. We didn't do that because we're all a family living in the same household, and my wife and I have shared checking, but whatever, it's a great option if what you've got is roommates. You select your bedding preference, and your choices are 1 king bed or 2 twin beds. And you can register your kids for the Carnival Youth Program. Looks like I did that. Great. There are some things about accepting various, the registration guidelines for the youth program. You accept the Carnival or the COVID-19 terms and conditions. Right now, for cruises departing out of the United States, you generally have to be vaccinated. There's an exception process under some medical circumstances, but you can't just assume you're going to get that exception. You have to have applied for that exception in advance and have gotten the documentation from Carnival. If you've been fully vaccinated, you have to test within 2 days before the cruise. And to be clear, I'm saying this in late June of 2022. I would absolutely make sure that what I'm saying now is still true on whatever day that you're going to get on the ship. But yeah, if you've been vaccinated, and the vaccination must be complete 14 days, but you have to have taken your second round of the vaccination at least 14 days before the day before your cruise, so effectively 15 days before the cruise. That's when you can take your COVID test 2 days in advance. If you've been vaccinated and have had at least 1 booster shot, and you're eligible for the booster shot, then you can take your COVID test 3 days before the cruise. So we'll give you the COVID terms and conditions, read those, then it'll give you a summary of the check-in. So, as of June 2022, that's what check-in is like on Carnival Cruises. I hope that has been helpful to you. If it hasn't, if it has, I would love for you to hit like and subscribe. You can follow us. We've got a webpage, and that's not Dine Drink Cruise, it's dinedrinktravel.com. You can also find us Dine Drink Travel on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. Look for a lot more of these videos over the next few weeks because as we get to Galveston, I'll post more from Galveston and we will also post from the ship. I tend to do fairly short and focused reviews, not a 30-minute spiel on here's the whole boat, but 5 or 10 minutes on some specific aspect of it. Please leave your comments in the comment section below. I'll do anything I can to be helpful, and happy travels. Bye.